Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin Banter. I've got Rick and Tony. We've got some interesting news to cover today. How you guys doing?
Good, you?
Doing good. I'm looking forward to this conversation. As always, one of the highlights of my week. Let's jump right in here. So we've got Swan sent out a notice that a phishing email, a data breach notice, was sent. They think so it went out to some of their marketing email recipients, probably from a third party data breach in 2022, and they said Swan will never ask you to send your sats to anyone. But Bitcoin phishing emails, this is all fair game for the Bitcoin Way team. Tony, what are your initial comments on this?
It's very unfortunate, man, that, again, this centralized collection of user information gets breached by someone who hasn't done, their proper due diligence, and making sure that this data remains safe at all times. It's a fact of our lives, unfortunately. Almost daily you hear about someone getting hacked and customer data, suffering the consequences of these attacks. You just have to be careful. I mean, when you're sending your emails, your information, I mean, if it's something not really that important, don't send the real deal. Use aliases for emails, fake information, things of that sort, so you're not susceptible, to be victims of such phishing scams. And as always, like no matter what you do, I mean, things always slip through the cracks. So you, as a user, you always have to be vigilant when you receive things that seem a little bit suspect. Now, the problem with that is that these days we have AI that are working against us. And so those that are doing these attacks have, these incredible tools that'll correct their spelling, correct their grammar, make the emails look fully legitimate, fooling even, some of the best of us. So there are some tips and tricks, that you can use to tell them apart, but it does require, serious paying attention, which unfortunately most people don't always, do. So it sucks to see this. I mean, but just be careful out there. I mean, this is a fact of life. It's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse, in my opinion, and it's only going to get a lot more difficult to detect what's real and what's fake. So as a user, you need to up your detective skills and think before you click when you receive such things.
Yeah, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, like Tony says, it's really unfortunate, right? And I know Corey at Swan is sort of saying like, well, these emails could have been leaked either by like HubSpot or some Klaviyo hack previously, and that data's leaked out that way. Which, I guess for me, it kind of reiterates this idea of just every time you give out your personal information anywhere, you kind of want to have this mentality that assumes that it will get leaked eventually, right? You're inputting your email into, I don't know, for online shopping or, signing up for email newsletters with different companies, and most people I think are still running around and using the same email for everything, which is, a mistake, because then if they get access to your email address, right, they've got half of the login details for almost everything that you use. Again, this is risky because let's say you've used that email address to sign up to, say, receive the Swan newsletter or sign up for an account. If you've also used that email everywhere else, these hackers and people trying to get to your data, they can start to build a bigger picture of who you are, potentially where you live, what you're all about. So again, I think as a user, there's not a huge amount you can do to stop centralized companies, getting compromised and having their data hacked. You can't stop that, right? You're not in control of their cybersecurity. So all you can really do is pay more attention when you are giving out your information, where you're putting it. Are you using the same email for things? Are you using burner emails? Especially when it comes to Bitcoin, right? So, if you're, I don't know, maybe you go and buy a hardware wallet or something like that, just consider that you are now potentially putting your name, your email address, your home address into a database, and that database is linked to a company that sells Bitcoin related products. Then all of a sudden, anyone who gets that list can start making assumptions that maybe you have some Bitcoin that's worth stealing, and that could lead to all manner of problems later down the line. And then, just reiterate what Tony's saying is you just got to have your wits about you. This is happening more and more and more. And because Bitcoin's getting more and more valuable, people are going to target you as an individual more and more often. Instead of hackers trying to get at big corporations, they're going to find it much easier to target the little guy now if you've got something worth stealing. So yeah, go slowly. Like if you get an email saying you need to quickly send some Bitcoin to this random address, that should just be an immediate red flag that, most reputable Bitcoin companies are never ever going to get in touch with you and ask for your seed phrase. They're never going to ask you to send Bitcoin anywhere. And I think in this instance as well, I think Corey shared that the email came from, I don't know, some domain that was obviously fake. So it's just slow down. Like, if you're ever in a position where you're like panicking and you're about to send like a big transaction worth a lot of money, that should just be your reminder to go, whoa, 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 hang on, let's just slow down, let's just read everything again. And hey, if you're a Bitcoin Way client, just ping us a message and talk to us, and we'll just calm you down and slow you down and make sure that you don't end up in a mess. So fingers crossed, no one lost their money. I think AI is a good point as well from Tony, because someone asked Corey, oh, could you just block transactions to the address that the scammers are using? But they're actually using a fresh Bitcoin address for every user that they send an email to. So, I mean, it's quite easy to create new Bitcoin addresses, right? But, if you want to create 10,000, it's probably relatively easy to do that with AI tools now. And it's so much easier for them to manage it and all that sort of stuff. So just a really good reminder, like keep your wits about you because everybody wants your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think of it as, like at the Bitcoin Way, we operate sort of on the 80-20 rule. We help do 20% of the work that gets you 80% of the result when it comes to your security, specifically online, mobile security, all of that stuff. But if there's anything I learned in, 2.5 years of grad school and in studying for privacy certifications, all this stuff is that the user at the end of the day is the weakest link, right? Like people need to become more vigilant and thoughtful in how they approach their online lives. And the challenge is there's not a tool that you can put in place that just alleviates that exposure. So be mindful of anything you're doing. And I think, Rick, you said it well. If you are feeling panicked and you're simultaneously about to send a significant transaction, that's your cue to pause. So well said, guys. Unfortunately, the attacks keep coming. It's just something we've got to live with. Hey there, just a really quick break from Bitcoin Banter and we'll be right back. Wanted to remind you that we, the Bitcoin Way, are the leaders in achieving self-sovereignty. Whether it's self-custodying your Bitcoin properly and securely, protecting your online life and keeping it private, or even coming up with a plan B option in the event you would need to move yourself or your family elsewhere. Go to thebitcoinway.com/podcast to schedule a few minutes to learn more from a member of our team. We hope to see you soon. Alrighty, on to the next piece of news. $100 billion asset manager VanEck says that Bitcoin could reach about 3 million by 2050. I have like 5 thoughts on this, but Rick, let's start with you.
Sure. I mean, like I've written a couple of newsletters about this sort of stuff about, why why would you ever invest in a superior form of money in the hope of gaining more inferior money? I mean that the logic there is mind-boggling, right? Like what gives Bitcoin value in the first place? Well, what gives it value is that it's decentralized, that it's got a finite supply, that no one controls it and censors it. So it's better money. So then you buy that in the hope that you end up with more dollars, which are not censorship resistant, which are printed out of the wazoo and is basically worthless paper. So that's the first thing to say is that VanEck positions itself as a sophisticated money manager that really understands the economy and how to grow your wealth. And when you read a headline like that, you think, wow, these guys have, less than a rudimentary understanding of what Bitcoin is, what it represents, and what the value proposition is. It's nothing to do with trying to get more dollars. This idea that Bitcoin is just an investable asset is complete and utter nonsense. And unfortunately, that idea does get pushed around a lot on Bitcoin Twitter and by certain prominent figures. And I think it leads people down the wrong path, because then they get really obsessed with the price. They try and trade it. They outsmart themselves when really, just move over and adopt a better technology. Like it's like adopting the wheel, right? It doesn't make any sense to adopt technology late That doesn't make any sense. And then the second thing is, I mean, I don't know where these numpties get their numbers from. I mean, how on earth could you possibly calculate what Bitcoin is going to be worth 25 years from now? Because if you stop and you think about what you'd have to do to figure that number out and have any sense of accuracy, would be number one, you have to sort of forecast the adoption of Bitcoin and how many people buy it and what the demand is, right? I mean, that's fairly easy to do. The demand will go up and the supply is finite. But then you're still measuring it in this currency where you have no idea how much the government is going to print, right? So what's a dollar worth in 2050? Nobody knows. So let's do some I did some really basic maths on an inflation calculator before we joined this call, right? And look, if you take $2.9 million in 2050 and you assume, hang on, I'm going to have to pull this up to get the numbers right. But if we ran at 10% inflation for those 25 years, then that $2.9 million would only have the same purchasing power today as about $300,000, right? So not $3 million, 300,000. So you could argue that's actually quite bearish, right? They're suggesting that your purchasing power is only going to go up four or 5x in 25 years. And the truth is, if Bitcoin has got to that value in dollars, it kind of suggests that dollars have become completely worthless. So the whole thing is a nonsense, and they just want to sell ETF products to you and all this paper Bitcoin and fake nonsense. And if anything, the more they put information out like this, the more I hope people realize that financial advisors they do like astrology, right? Astrology, sort of like reading tea leaves and looking at the stars, and they are just guessing, man. They have no idea. So yeah, another big L for VanEck, but there's no surprises there.
Yeah, the yield on Bitcoin is freedom, and if you think it's some form of fiat currency, then you're missing the point. Tony, I know you like price predictions about as much as you like taxes. Why don't you share your thoughts?
For me, this is all just rubbish clickbait, just to gather attention. Obviously, like Rick said, these guys have no idea what money is, nor are they interested in learning what money is. You don't give up the world's best money to replace it by a shitcoin like the dollar, right? Especially as it continues to get debased and hyperinflated on a daily basis. As for their predictions, why stop at 2.9 million? Why don't make it 290 million? Since you're throwing darts on a wall and hoping, where trying to figure out where it sticks. These people they're commission driven. So their business, when they sell an ETF or some rubbish product based on fiat profits, they get paid in commission. So that's all these guys see. So for them, they're like that hamster on turbocharge, trying to make as much sales and commissions as possible, because that's what they define as making a good revenue, a good income. They don't care about the user. They have no interest in their well-being. They clearly have zero idea what Bitcoin is. They are using it as, like the new kid on the block, like the marketing brand, the new buzzword to try to sell this fiat-based product to people that are even more clueless than they are, in the hopes of attracting them. And unfortunately, a lot of suckers fall for that stuff, and a lot of them get hurt. Hopefully in due time, less and less, fall for these gimmicks and start to understand what money is. See, ultimately, Bitcoin was never meant to be an extension of the dollar or any fiat currency. Bitcoin is not here to make you fiat rich. Bitcoin is here to completely obliterate the dollar and all fiat currencies and replace that corrupt system by something that is completely incorruptible by any human being, no matter who they are, where they are. That's what Bitcoin is. So when we want to live in a world that's free, true freedom, we're going to want to interact in Satoshis. We want nothing to do with the dollar or the euro or any other garbage fiat currency out there, no matter what it is. So for me, this is just like mindless clickbait, put out there for suckers. Unfortunately, there's still too many of them that fall for it. Hopefully by 2050, there'll be much less.
Yeah, and I agree with everything both of you said. In spite of bashing these price predictors, I will say this feels so bearish to me too. At the same time, I have no idea what's going to happen, but the idea of $3 million Bitcoin 26 years from now, 25 years from now, I'm like, with all the money printing I anticipate, and like that's kind of my only base case, is there's going to be a lot of money printing. I can't imagine we get to 2050 and like we're cheering that we reached 3 million. Like I think that could happen in the next 8 years. But that aside, price predictions are stupid. Ignore everything I just said. We've got one more thing to share, and this was a Bitcoin Way tweet. I assume courtesy of Rick. Coinbase is a giant honeypot that the greedy government won't be able to ignore. And we're typically pretty cautious about, going after specific companies, but I think Coinbase has painted a target on its back in so many ways. Rick, I assume you made that. What were you thinking? What was the inspiration?
Yeah, man, I like making memes. So it's always, that's a fun part of my job here at the Bitcoin Way. I love memes because you can say so much with just an image, right? And if you put 5 or 6 words on an image, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Well, the words you put on a meme are kind of like a multiplier. So I think it's an effective way to market any sort of concept or idea you want to plant in someone's head. And the idea behind it is, I mean, look, I don't have a particular problem with Coinbase over any other exchange, really, right? I don't know how tight their security is, and I'm not really trying to take pot shots at them as an individual business. What I'm trying to highlight to people when we put out messages like that is just like understand how much Bitcoin is now being custodied by Coinbase, right? So as far as I understand it, the vast majority, if not all of the ETFs, that's where all the Bitcoin that they're purchasing on behalf of customers is being stored. And it just means that Coinbase, whether they like it or not, they are the most attractive target for anyone that's seeking to either steal or confiscate that Bitcoin. And it's a huge honeypot. And I didn't talk about hackers in that meme. I spoke directly about the government. And hey, I mean, listen, man, I got into Bitcoin in 2014 and everyone said that I'm a conspiracy theorist for the last 15 years, right? But these conspiracies, man, they keep coming true. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And when I see a big honeypot like that, it just sends my mind back to, things like, in 1933, Executive Order 6102, where Roosevelt made it illegal to hoard gold coins, and they had all these government edicts that said you had to sell your physical gold back to the government. And look, we spoke a bit earlier when we were talking about VanEck's price prediction, and we're talking about the idea that the dollar becomes completely worthless, right? And you're starting to see now other countries transact with each other outside of the dollar system. So, my assumption is, right, if you just follow the logic through to its logical conclusion, you get to the point where you're like, well, hang on, so fiat currency is going to die. Bitcoin is going to be the monetary asset and the reserve money used by the whole world. At a certain point, governments never produce anything of value themselves. Everything they own, they've taken from someone else. So do I think it's insane to think that, a US president of either party might come forward and say, look, guys, we're not going to steal this money from you. We're going to give you dollars, but we are going to commandeer that Bitcoin in the interests of national security to keep America safe, and all these other reasons that they've come up with, right? And in that situation, if your Bitcoin sat inside the exchange like that, and the government issues that order, a company like Coinbase is going to comply, right? They're going to comply. And that means that, you might get paid out something in dollars by your government in exchange for your Bitcoin, but you're not going to be given a choice over what price you receive. And you're also not going to be given a choice to say, no, actually, I just still want my Bitcoin. So, man, it's just like, wow, if that's the biggest honeypot and the governments are looking at it and hackers are looking at it, like, that's just not where I would put my Bitcoin, right? It's just way, way too risky. So I'm just trying to get it through to people that, like, look, you don't want to get caught up in that mess. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen, but I'm saying if you take your Bitcoin off the exchange, you reduce that threat or that risk to zero. It's relatively easy to do. You just have to learn a few skills and get a little bit of hardware. But, people really need to get it through their heads that, like, Bitcoin was invented to be your own bank, and we're still using cryptocurrency exchanges as banks. It's kind of maddening especially for, given what we do as a business, right? Like we're 15 years into Bitcoin and we're still using banks, and you just think, God, what is it going to take for everyone to suddenly wake up? Because apparently the FTX collapse wasn't big enough. I mean, for me, I thought, wow, now everyone's seeing FTX blow up. No one is under any illusion that keeping your money on an exchange is a good idea, and yet people are still doing it. So yeah, just trying to plant those seeds in people's heads if we can.
Yeah, Tony.
Well, for me, I put the probability of Coinbase being hacked, attacked, or seized by a government, I'd say 90% at some point. In my head, there's no doubt it's going to happen at some point in time, because it's like having a big flashing sign up on your forehead, come attack me. And it's just a matter of time where, the value of what they're hoarding becomes big enough for someone to say, you know what, let's do it. And that's when, all bets are off, and, whatever happens, happens. What bothers me is that when places like Coinbase are still hoarding, all that Bitcoin, it tells me that no one has learned anything from all the collapses that have happened repeatedly over time. You're still following the same bad habits, thinking that there's going to be someone better than you to safeguard your money, which in this case happens to be Coinbase. Why are they better than you? I mean, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer technology, right? It's peer-to-peer money. It's created to be decentralized. It's created so that everyone holds their own funds. Why do you need a centralized place like Coinbase to do it for you? Is it because you don't trust yourself? If you don't trust yourself, it's because you don't know what to do. And if that's the case, you need to learn, not just pass off that responsibility to someone else and then wait until your turn comes to blow up, to figure out that this was a bad idea in the first place. All these honeypots, the ETFs, Coinbase, everything similar to that, all of these guys are going to get attacked at some point. In my head, it is almost like 100% guaranteed, because the value is just there, and it's just one centralized location. It's, you just get a group of really good hackers, fueled by greed, and there you go. It's game over. You don't know what Coinbase's security measures are. You don't know what any of the ETF companies' security measures are. They could be just as silly as any other company that's been hacked recently. So this is, but in my head, people won't learn this lesson until it affects them directly. Like the FTX, I thought, okay, that's it. People are going to learn. But if you think back, I mean, less than 1% of the world was in crypto when FTX blew up. So that represents really nothing, a drop in the water. Where I think people are going to learn their lesson is that when that fabricated cyber attack comes about, maybe this year, maybe soon enough, and everybody's bank accounts get frozen and somehow they lose access to their funds, that's when people are going to realize, hey, I live in Beverly Hills. This is not supposed to happen here. But yet their savings account have been flatlined to one big fat zero, in the same way my account has been flatlined to zero in Lebanon, along with hundreds of thousands of other folks. So it just reiterates the fact that it doesn't matter where you're living, your turn is coming. And it's going to take personal pain for people to finally learn, hopefully. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a percentage of, those donkeys that still don't learn no matter what happened. But for the most part, the majority of folks, after like such a catastrophic loss like this, will adopt the measures to ensure that this never happens to them again. And Bitcoin, again, was created to replace old habits, not to extend their lifeline. So that's my position on this. And again, I reiterate that Coinbase and similar places like that will be attacked at some point in the future, probably not that far off either.
Amen. Not your keys, not your coins. Gentlemen, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. For everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. If you've got your coins on Coinbase or any other exchange for that matter, if you've got a crappy hardware wallet, we're the guys to come talk to. Go to thebitcoinway.com/podcast. We will walk you through a self-custody setup that you are the owner of, that you can be confident in and have peace of mind when you sleep at night. We also help, as I mentioned earlier, with online privacy. We can't prevent you from clicking a phishing email, but there are so many important things you can do preceding that to protect yourself. And of course, plan B, residency to citizenship options as well. We are all about self-sovereignty here at the Bitcoin Way. So we'd love to talk with you. Go to thebitcoinway.com/podcast to schedule some time. Tony, Rick, thank you guys as always. Look forward to chatting again later this week.
Thanks, Michael. Looking forward to it.
Cheers, guys.